Yeah, you hear that a lot from people. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the fact that BP, had shut down pushing the mud into the valve for 16 hours, and Thad Allen apparently didn't know about it, some 14 hours into it, was pretty stunning. That they allowed him to give a press conference in which he said, the applicant's continuing, the mud is being pushed down, when in fact it wasn't and hadn't been for many hours, is kind of emblematic of the question a lot of people ask here of who really is in charge. That being said, look, I think people will be pleased that the president did make an effort to come down here today and meet with parish presidents and the governor as well. But there's a lot of, there's going to be a lot of disappointment as well. I think people were really hoping, that the president would at least maybe meet with some fishermen, if not go out to the very marshes where you really do see the oil that has already started to kill off some of these marshes. I think there's going to be a sense of, the criticism that the president didn't spend enough time, that he didn't meet with local people who are really affected, and that he still seemed kind of, cerebral and disconnected from it. Whether that's fair or not, look, he was in meetings for several hours, going over detailed organizational things, which does matter. There's been a big criticism from parish presidents that the Coast Guard, that their kind of control has been too centralized, and that the officials down at the local level don't have decision-making authority and haven't been able to actually, deploy boom and get decisions made in a timely manner. Thad Allen clearly, got that message yesterday. He said he's changing his command and control structure to kind of flatten it out. I suspect there was a lot of talk about among parish presidents to the President of the United States on that today.
It does seem, and Anderson, it's funny, you use the word disconnected, and I think you really captured it. As an old journalism professor used to say, WC, Mr. Sanchez, or Mr. Anderson in this case, I think that's the word that may have been missing. Look, Candy Crowley, say what you want about President Bush. When he went to 9/11 and he took that bullhorn and he started screaming and putting his arm around those firefighters, it was a seminal moment in everything that happened post 9/11. It was a message, per se, to the American people. And Anderson's right. It may be more important for the president to be in staffing meetings and briefings and getting the X's and O's down. But is it not, for presidents, for all leaders, in fact, equally important to have that moment of gravitas, that moment when people can look at you and say, you know what, by golly, looks like that guy's in charge?
Well, you have to have one of two things here. You cannot, at the same time, seem a little disconnected. Look, this is this president's personality. He really, it's not that he doesn't feel things, it's that he's just not an emoter in the way that Ronald Reagan was, in the way that Jimmy Carter was, in the way that George W. Bush was, or Bill Clinton. It's just not who he is. Having said that, you need to have a little bit of that as president, but you certainly have to have it if people are down there screaming about how they're not getting what they need to be getting. So you have both this feeling of incompetence as well as someone that seems disconnected. And I'm not really big on I want the president to pretend something so that people feel better. But the fact of the matter is that you're building on a feeling down in the Gulf region that is reaching out throughout America that the right things are not being done. He's claimed responsibility. He owns it. Now he has to make sure it works. And right now it doesn't seem to be. And so you add that on to the, boy, he seems disconnected, and it's a problem for him.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, the worse it gets as far as this top kill operation goes, it becomes a bigger and bigger problem for him. Anderson, I know you're busy. You've got a lot of reporting to do, and I don't want to keep you from that, but let me just ask you one thing you didn't address when we were talking just a little while ago. You gave us a real good sense of what the people are thinking there about the White House and the administration. What is the thinking about BP down there? Because I know there's thousands of BP employees, as they said in their ad in the New York Times today, who work in that region. How is BP being seen today by the folks down there you talk to?
Well, certainly there's a big distinction, I think, in most people's minds here between the BP people who they know who live in their communities and a lot of folks work for BP down here and want this company to, do well and need the business and need the money. But I think there's a lot of criticism, certainly of the leadership of BP, of the way that they have handled this, both handled it logistically, actually responding to the leak itself, especially responding to the cleanup. I think people are less critical of, most people understand, look, this is, way down deep in the water. It's incredibly technically difficult. But they make a distinction between that operation going on and what we're seeing, the operations on the shores, in the marshes, where in some places we've seen oil sitting now for more than a week. And booms not being collected, and there are not enough booms. So there's criticism of the cleanup effort that the BP is making on the shore, distinct from the operation that this top kill operation that's going on. And also, beyond the logistics of it, just the way that BP has handled this in terms of public relations, in terms of transparency, in terms of talking to people and informing people. I mean, the fact that for 16 hours they had stopped this top kill operation and didn't, feel it was necessary to tell anybody about it is indicative to a lot of people. A lot of people just kind of shook their heads when they heard that and just said, I can't believe it. But unfortunately, they could believe it given what they've seen over the last month or so.
You have just so nailed it on the head, man. I think, what you just mentioned about those 16 hours, I think that's going to live in the news cycle for much beyond the next 16 hours. Anderson Cooper, Candy Crowley, two of our best. My thanks to both of you. Anderson, I'll be looking forward to your reports throughout the day, and certainly I'll be tuned in with the rest of Americans tonight at 10p. Thank you to you. Thank you, Candy, as well.